Welcome to Cedarcroft. Let's make some bread. Okay, the first thing we're going to need to do is set up this Bosch mixer. This mixer is really amazing. If you are thinking about getting one, I would highly recommend it. It is really a game changer when it comes to making a lot of bread at one time. I can make a double recipe of Julia Child's basic white bread recipe. I can make that in this Bosch, which makes 4 nice size loaves of bread. Why this is not going in, I don't know. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is 1 cup, and keep in mind that I am doubling this recipe, 4 nice sized loaves of bread. So we need 1 cup of warm water. Okay, 1 cup of warm tap water, or warm water, any kind. 2 tablespoons of yeast, and I'm using Fleischmann's yeast. It's the brand that I can find at Walmart, and so that's what I use. Two tablespoons of yeast. And 2 tablespoons of sugar. And the directions say to let that set for 5 minutes just to make sure that your yeast is good. And so I did the first few times, and my yeast is good. It's still good, but I still let it sit. So I'm just going to give that a little stir just to get the sugar in the water. All right, so I'll let that sit right there. And the next thing we're going to need after we do that, we're going to need to add the rest of the water. This double recipe takes 5 cups of warm water. So we put 1 cup in, and so I'm going to fill the 4-cup measuring cup with warm water. And while I do that, I am going to measure out the oil. So it's 5 cups of warm water, 2 tablespoons of yeast, 2 tablespoons of sugar. Let's just do just a touch more. Isn't that the way? You get it a little too full and a little too under full. Okay. It takes 13 cups of flour, sometimes 14 cups of flour, depending on the weather. It takes 4 teaspoons of salt and 1/2 cup of oil. So I'm going to measure out my oil in this measuring cup. And I only use olive oil or coconut oil. So I always use olive oil in this bread, and it comes out perfect. This bread also, you can use butter. The one time I used butter, it was a little too chilly in the house, and the dough had big chunks of butter in it, so I avoid that now. Okay, so we're going to add the rest of the water, oil, and 1/2 of the flour. So before we do that, I need to measure out the flour. And I am just using all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour if you like. And maybe one day I will. But for right now, this is fine. 1, 2, 13, and then I always, boy, I made a mess with that. I always get just a little extra, just in case I need it. All right, so now what we're going to do is add the rest of the flour, the oil, the rest of the water, oil, and half of the flour, and we're going to just combine it. So, so that you can get the batter going. Then after you mix that up just a little bit, just to get it going, then you add the rest of the flour and the salt. And then you combine it and knead it for 8 to 10 minutes. So we need to do 4 teaspoons of salt. So I've got 1 tablespoon here, which is 3 teaspoons. There we go. And a teaspoon measure. Okay. And now we are going to add the rest of the flour and mix it up. So first we mix it up, and then we start kneading. And then as we knead, then we will see whether we need to add more flour or more liquid. When I use oil, I have always had to add more flour. And don't be worried, just pay attention to your dough. Okay, so the dough is still a little bit sticky. I didn't want to over flour the dough in the bosh because, you know, it's such a large amount of dough. So what I'm going to do is just put it out here and see, it does have enough gluten in it. It is good. It's just a little sticky. So I'm just going to add a little bit of dough and knead it just for a tiny bit. There we go. So flour up my hand really well. Sorry you can't see this. I don't have you at the right angle. Next time I will do better. Let's see. Okay, so what I'm doing is breaking the dough off around this centerpiece because I find sometimes that centerpiece will have a little bit of oil or grease or something come up to the top, and I definitely don't want that getting in our dough. So now it does look really sticky, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But that's okay because the first time that I made this dough, when I used butter, it was so hard and tough. And the dough was not supple at all. It didn't have a give to it at all. Now, mind you, I worked it until the bread was okay, but it wasn't fantastic. And so I'm going to sprinkle. Yep, that looks like a lot, doesn't it? Well, yes it is. So I love the way this dough feels like a living, soft organism. I love, it's like a soft, I can't even describe it, but I love the way this dough feels. So I just work it a little bit, and this is what I've been doing. So it's nothing new, but see how it just comes together? Look at that. Look at that. It's just so beautiful, and it's so soft. It just feels wonderful. Just feels so wonderful. So, yeah. So there we go. I need to get this dough off my hands and incorporate that back into the dough. We don't want to waste any dough, do we? Nope. Okay. So here we go. Let's incorporate some of that back in. There we go. And it slipped out, didn't it? Get back in there. Okay. So we don't want to waste any of the dough, obviously. And I'm not going to overwork this dough because it just feels so wonderful. So this, you know, I told you I'm making a double batch. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of olive oil into 2 of these bowls. And I just swirl it in. Swirl it in. It's okay if there's flour in this one. It's okay. And then I'm going to, let's see, let's get a little bit of flour on this. And we're just going to eyeball it. I'm never even, so don't judge me. But I try my best, but I know I'm never even. And I could weigh it, I just don't take the time to do that. Okay, let's see. Let's get this in there. There we go. Okay, so now just going to bring this together, roll it around until I have a nice little ball. There we go. And let's put this in there and then turn it over. And this way it doesn't stick. Okay, and now let's get this one in there. Oh, see, I can tell this one's a smaller loaf. Oh, well. Okay, let's get that up. Okay, let's get that in here. Spin that around. Jump it over. Okay, so we're ready for the first rise. And so what I'm going to do, as you can see, this bowl is bigger than this bowl. So this bowl is going to rise and it's going to look bigger faster. And that's okay. We're going to wait until this one just cannot handle anymore. And then they'll both be ready. Okay, so I'm going to get some plastic wrap on it and I'll show you what I do. And yes, I do a little bit extra, and you'll see why when it comes time to actually putting the bread in the bread pans. Then when I do the second rise, I just use the same sheet, and it will cover 2 bread pans. And now we wait. It usually takes about an hour for that to fully rise, and then we get to do the next part, which is just as easy. So stick around while I clean up. Let's check and see how our bread is doing. So let me turn that light out. Maybe we can see it a little bit better. Not a whole lot better, but you can see that the dough is rising a little bit. You can especially see it on this one. This one not so much because it's hiding in there, but this one you can see it's almost to the top. And when this one rises, it's actually going to puff up well over the top. So let's keep an eye on it. It's been an hour. Let's check on our bread. Oh yeah, let me turn this light out again. There we go. Yep, I don't know if you're able to see. Let me pull this out. See, we got a little doughboy going on right there. And this one obviously is not going to go over the top because it's a deeper bowl, but let's get this bread in the pans. This dough is so soft. The first thing we're going to do is pat it out and just give it a little bit of a knead. The dough is so supple and soft. It's really unbelievable how soft it is. what we're going to do is cut it in half and just do the best you can. And as we cut it in half, then we're going to use our fingers and spread the dough, each half of the dough, into a rectangle. And as we do that, on this one, I am popping little bubbles because I forgot to punch down the dough on that first bowl. We're going to roll it up in a nice tight roll, tuck in the ends, and then we're going to pinch the dough together on the seam, put it in the baking dish, and push it down so that the corners do not have any gaps. Then we're going to do the same for the next half of that dough. And as we do that, then we're going to roll it up again, pinch the seams, tuck in the ends, and pinch the ends. We want to have a nice looking bread at the end. And the way we do that is to take care of the seams at the beginning. Now I take both loaves over to the oven and I leave a light on in the oven, and then I take that one piece of plastic wrap and put it over both baking pans of dough. Now this one I remembered to punch down. Cut it in half, do the best you can. Do you see how easy this dough is to work with? Roll it up, pinch the seams, tuck in the ends, pinch the ends, and put in the dish. After you make a few of these loaves of bread, you are going to feel confident and you are going to really enjoy this process. I have to admit, the first time I made this dough, first time I made this bread, I was nervous. I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, so I have some bread over here, rising, and it is resting for 90 minutes. This is for our pierogi. And over here is our bread dough rising, and it's almost ready. I have the upper oven preheating. Once the upper oven gets to 375, we'll transfer the resting dough up to the top oven, and we will bake for 30 to 35 minutes. And then we'll have bread. So excited. All right, so it's time to transfer the bread. Okay, timer set for 30 minutes and we'll check it in 30. It's time to get the bread out. And as you can see, I have my serious baking face on. Don't be fooled. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I am just concentrating like nobody's business. This oven is taller than I am, and I have the scars to prove it. we have 4 really beautiful loaves of bread. And what I like to do when they first come out of the oven is take a stick of butter and just rub it on the top. It makes the bread have a nice soft crust. It's easier to cut and it's more pleasant to eat as a sandwich. And voila, 4 really pretty loaves of bread. Now this bread I cut up and I bought bread bags. They're just like regular sandwich loaf or sandwich bags from Walmart, only they're loaf bags, and they come with ties. And all I do is once the bread is completely cool, I cut it, and it makes a really, really pretty slice of bread. Once it's completely cool, I do put it in these bags and I freeze it until we're ready to use it. So this one is a previously frozen loaf of bread, and as you can see, it's still perfectly fine. Beautiful and ready to eat. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this recipe. It sure was fun to make. And as always, thank you for joining me here on this adventure as I go back home to Cedarcroft.